Okay, so it took me a while to decide what to talk about when I first got the invitation. I've been doing research for 16 years now, and I've just been going along and doing it, and I don't think I've spent a lot of time until in the recent years kind of asking how does my journey fit in the discussion right now about women in science. We've all seen this type of graph. There's different permutations of it, but basically they always say the same message, where we all start off equally with an equal number of men and women in any type of STEM disciplines. And as career progression, as we look across career progression, we always see this 80 to 85% of men at the top positions, and 20% of women in those same positions. And I think these data are from 2002 and 2010, and nothing really changes, and I think even the updated one never changed. And there was a recent survey of about 500 women in STEM in Australia, kind of asking, what do you think those barriers to career advancement are? And interestingly enough, the first one is really balancing work-life responsibilities. And I would argue that if we went through the list, a lot of the other barriers are actually quite dependent on balancing work-life responsibilities, and that if we fix the top one, or at least try to fix the top one, we can probably start eliminating some of the bottom ones. And so really the point of today and me being here is not to be prescriptive at all. I'm not here to tell you how to balance your life or your work and your responsibilities, because we all have different work and life responsibilities. But I thought that I would take this opportunity to reflect on my journey and highlight some things that have been challenging and not, and perhaps that'll be helpful to you. My main journey has been as a researcher, but also as a mom, M-O-M, from where I come from. But my kids call me Mum now, which I have to get used to. And really, that's been a core part of my research career, because my kids were born during my PhD. Albeit I did a PhD in Canada, so they're always much longer than what you do here in the UK. But Olivia was born in January 2008, and Alexandre was born in January 2010, and you can see that my PhD was from 2006 to 2012. So I've never known research life without my kids and my family. They've always just been part of it. And so I think that's why sometimes I've never had that questioning, because it's just been everything together, and sometimes I don't take the time to think about it. So I've said that they were born during my PhD. I was lucky enough to have shared parental leave, so my partner's in the room today, because he works here as well. But we were very lucky that in Canada, my partner worked at the Canadian government and could take actually 9 months of leave. And because I was in academia, we shared it. So I took 6 months and Jeff took 9 months, so we had 3 months overlap. And it allowed me to go back to work. I went back to work 6 months. I only took 6 months. I could have taken a year, but it was my choice to go back after 6 months because I was ready. But also it allowed me that flexibility to know that Dad was at home taking care of the kids while I went at work. And I think that's quite important. There's a lot of dialogue right now about shared parental leave and giving equal leave to parents, but the dialogue's at the very bottom of the echelon, and we really need support for that from higher up, and it's got to be simpler for both parents to just take time at home and support each other while we're developing our careers. I was lucky to have a very supportive work environment. My PhD supervisor, Rashmi Kathari, never questioned my intentions. His wife and him, carried my kids, love my kids. They still interact with my kids. And so there was never any question about my priorities. But I always question that word of I was lucky to have a PhD supervisor that was supportive, because we shouldn't be lucky to have a supportive supervisor. All supervisors should just welcome whatever life changes a student or a trainee comes with. I say for the most part, because I did encounter some resistance within the lab, within some members. There was one instance where I came back from my second maternity leave, and there was a new postdoc in the lab, and I won't name names because I know we're being filmed, but we're far away, so no one will remember this. But I just remember this individual not really interacting or engaging with me for the first 6 months. And eventually I came to have my lab meeting, presented my project, and all of a sudden his attitude changed towards me. Basically, he was taking me seriously all of a sudden, because for the first 6 months I was back, he just saw me as a mom, and I took a break and I didn't care about science. And I did have that conversation with colleagues about his changing mentality, and everyone realized or acknowledged that that was his perception of me for the first 6 months. I didn't care about science, that I'd made a decision between research and having a family. And when I look back, I wish I would have challenged that. I wish I would have challenged him. I wish I would have asked my colleagues to challenge that. And I guess that's my main message, is we need to challenge those types of responses to individuals that take time, whether it's for children or whatnot. And I realize I'm talking about having kids, but we all have different type of life responsibilities, and I acknowledge that. I worked a lot. I worked hard. I've always worked hard, but I learned to work efficiently. My days at those times, I think, were 7 to 3. I would leave very early, get in 7 to 3, but I was out of there by 3 to be with the kids. I did go sometimes on the weekend, but I would accomplish more than some of my lab mates that were there for 10 to 12 hours. So you learn to work differently, and the reason I raise that is really I try to have that same type of attitude in my lab now. Is I don't count hours. People should just be able to show up when they need to show up, do what they need to do, and then hopefully that balances out what they need to be doing at home as well. I'll talk about blended work and home life in all of my slides, because that's what's worked for me. So I've never separated both aspects of my life. My kids very early on came to work with me at the office. We went to conferences. I presented posters with Olivia in the little carrier and had drinks and cocktails after with her in the carrier. But equally, earlier, I was in my PhD. I was younger. I wanted to do social things. So very early on, Jeff and I invited the lab to our house for Christmas parties. And you can ask any of them. They were wild. They were amazing. We stayed up until 2 or 3. But that allowed us to have that kind of social life and interaction with our lab, but also having our kids around. And yes, there are many pictures and videos that are not allowed to be shown from these Christmas parties, but we did have a good time. And so the second stage of that kind of career was the postdoc. So we had 2 kids. We were in Ottawa, Canada, and it was, do we stay here or do we move? So we did move. So we moved from Ottawa, Canada to Montpellier, France, and it is a clear distinction. It was beautiful. Over 300 days of sun in Montpellier, France. I recommend it to anyone if you have the chance. And so the kids were 2.5 and 4.5. So it wasn't easy, but we did it. What was important was compromise on location. So a lot of people have asked me throughout the years, why did you go to Montpellier, France? It is the only place Jeff would move to. So when we were in Canada, I said, where could I go? And he said, south of France. So I sent application from Nice to Marseille and Montpellier and visited there, and then that's why we went there. And I think that was very important, because you need that support, but you also need to compromise. I discovered the 9-week annual leave, and most importantly, that your career can survive it. So if you've not been in North America, or you don't know, we have very little annual leave. I think by the time we moved to France, perhaps Jeff was on 2 to 3 weeks of annual leave, and he'd been working at the government for 17 years. And so at that point, your 1 week is between Christmas, right? So one of them's gone at Christmas, and the summer you'll take 1 week and then maybe follow it later with a few days. So when I first started in France, and all of a sudden you've got 9 weeks, the first summer I took 1 week. and everyone else has gone the entire summer, and I'm thinking, no, you can't. You gotta work, science is gonna stop, your project is gonna stop. And then slowly I started taking a week and a half, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks. Not bringing the computer, not bringing the phone, and then you realize actually no one scooped me. You know, the research continued, and actually I felt better. So it's really something that I now hopefully encourage to the students as well, that you know, you have time, take it. You know, your research is not going to suffer, it makes you a better person for it. And now I do take 3 weeks in the summer and weeks here and there, but I am very grateful for discovering the 9-week annual leave. I think there are pros and cons of being away from family, and that has been difficult. So in terms of having your kind of family support for helping with the kids particular, that was very difficult at first. They were very young, so we needed to either always be with them or you know, actually we never had a babysitter, so we were always with them, and then when people visited, we said, okay, here you go, take them, and then we left for the day. But that rarely happened. But I think one of the nicer things for me of leaving with the kids and doing this is we really became a unit, because we were living in this gorgeous country and it was just the 4 of us, and every weekend I was like, where are we going to go? What are we going to discover? And I think it really united us. And that was part of our journey because of the work that I do. Supportive partner, Jeff's going to come up all the time, because none of this was ever possible without him actually saying, okay, let's go, let's pack our bags and go to France. Blended work and home life. We had lots of dinners with our colleagues. Kids came to work. We went to their house, and it's just been always important to me to mix both worlds, or that's just how it's worked for me. And I just put this, it's the best decision we ever made. I always say, when we first left Canada, we were supposed to leave for 2 years. Our boxes were in storage because we were coming back, and we've not been back. We've been away for 7 years. Yeah, so it is possible. It is possible to have kids, to have a partner, and just leave and go, and life brings you where it needs to be. So I'll never regret that decision we made. And then we left France. We left the beautiful sea and sunshine for work purposes, for money purposes. And we went to Oxford, which is not so bad, but less sunshine. The kids were 5 and 7, so they were getting a bit older. It was nerve-wracking taking them out of the school system and bringing them there. Actually, they were fully, my maternal tongue is French, so they were fully educated and schooled in French. So we kind of dropped them in an Oxford English environment, and now they speak with an English accent. You wouldn't know that they were Canadian or French. But what I really, really enjoyed during that period was rediscovering my non-mom identity. I think when you have young kids, at one point they just take your whole life and that's all you do. But they were at an age where actually at that point I was able to leave them a night with Jeff, and Jeff had his night out as well. And it was just really nice to actually leave kind of the mom identity away and just go to the pub. So every Friday night was uni night at the pub, and went out for drinks. And I think that was really, I'm not saying go out for drinks, but what I'm trying to say, it was really nice to kind of rediscover that person that I was before the kids, and to see that I could do both. Actually, I could be that researcher that interacts with colleagues and also go home and be the mom. And that was very beneficial to me, to know that those two people could coexist together. had a very supportive work environment as well there. I think this is the first time that we started to ask for help. So we never had family around us, and we never asked for help. But at one point, it just kind of got too much. It got too much to me progress in my career, Jeff progress in his career, and having to, drop off the kids' activities and whatnot. And this is the first time we actually started to ask, friends, parents of friends at school, can you pick up the kids? Can the kids sleep at your house? Can whatnot? And the main message here is I think we waited too long to ask for help. I think sometimes we think we have to do it all. And if we don't do it all, then we failed. But actually, it's the best thing I've ever done is to ask for help. And now I do it all the time. And I don't say, I'm sorry, I need. It's just, could you please take the kids? Could you just do that? Could you do that? And I do it in return after. But I think that's it. When we've got too much on our plates, we can't forget that people are there and sometimes just waiting for us to ask and to help out. At that point in my career, I was juggling a lot. We're all juggling a lot. But I think what really helped is to have clear intentions and relevant choices. And what I mean by that is I knew at that point I wanted a job. I didn't want to be a postdoc for 10, 12 years. We had 2 kids. I needed something permanent. And so I started not saying yes to everything and actually saying no when I knew that it was more to help others and not help me, and when it would have been too much on my plate and prevented me from doing what I really needed to do to get to where I wanted in my research career. And it was okay. It was okay to say no and say I don't have time, or could you ask for someone else? And I started speaking up for myself. So one clear example to me that really helped propel was, we're all found, or hopefully not all, but we're often found in situations where we're helping to write a grant or a paper for someone, and we're not necessarily acknowledged for that. And so I was in the process of helping to write this huge grant, but I was not named anywhere. And actually, I just asked. I just said, I think my name should be on that. And that there was no opposition to that. But had I not asked, I would have not gotten what I needed. And the next day I was told, well, we've created a career development fellowship for you. Okay. So from that, I got a career development fellowship and everything spawned. So don't ever be scared to ask what you deserve, actually. And usually people sometimes are not doing it on purpose, but they've just not kind of acknowledge that they need to be helping you. So I started to make, pointed choices. Supportive partner, Jeff is, again. And he told me, don't write supportive partner because, maybe not everyone has a partner. But for me, that was important. But whether it's friends or parents or a network, it doesn't matter. But people around you that support your choices and you in difficulties, that's really what I'm trying to highlight. And blended work and home life. So always bring the kids everywhere. And equally our colleagues. And then my last step, I do hope it's my last step. We've moved 5 times in the last 7 years, so unless they kick me out, I'd like to stay. So in 2017, we moved from Oxford to Keele. The kids were 8 and 10, and the first year was quite difficult. So I'm at the School of Medicine, and they were very, very supportive. And I wasn't ready to move because my research was still ongoing in Oxford. So we did this 1 year where I commuted here, not every day, but when I had teaching commitments or meetings. And that was a stress on this kind of work-life balance because it was long days. And Jeff was working at Imperial, so he was going east, I was going north. That's when we asked for a lot of help. And we did get some. So that was very difficult, not sustainable. But I think the point here that I'm trying to make is sometimes it's okay, I think. Sometimes it's okay to say, we're going to take a hit. We're going to take a hit for 1 year. It's going to be tough. We're going to be tired. But actually, it's going to get us where we need to get. And that was very helpful for us. The work environment, the School of Medicine, and the environment here at Life Sciences has been incredibly supportive. So all of these, I've never felt that it was an issue, to Yes, I personally have never felt any kind of difficulties, and very much supportive in what I do and how I do things. I think personally, I think the stability of the lectureship position eased my stress. So I think, when you're kind of at that cusp of getting a position, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to succeed and do everything perfect. And I think that's kind of eased my outlook on how I do things and how I balance my responsibilities. In the last few years, I've rediscovered me time. I love reading. I have bookcases full of books, and I hadn't grabbed a proper book for ages. And now we're always at the library. I read quite a lot, particularly before bed. The kids are old enough; they like reading, so I bring them to the library, and we all sit in the living room and read our books together. And I know it seems simple, but sometimes I think we're so busy kind of trying to reach our aims for our career that we forget that those types of things are important. I like to go to the gym, so I've kind of taken that space for me. And I sometimes do sit in the office and say, oh, maybe I'll skip the class. And then I've got to mentally go through the process. No, you're going to get up, you're going to go to the gym, and you can finish that email later. But the kids being older and kind of the environment here has allowed me to breathe a bit more and take a bit more time. Jeff's back on, and the blended work and home life. I think we've already had a picnic in the park with the kids and the students, and that's just how it is. And my kids came to the first contemporary medicine lecture series that we had at the med school because Mommy talks about this all the time. So you're going to come, you're going to sit in the back. So that's how I decide to do it. I stole this. I found this when I was going on Twitter to try to find things. So this group generated this tips for parenting and PhDs. But really, I think, one could apply it that these are all tips that, for finding work-life balance that works for you. And I've told you my story, but I acknowledge that it might not be yours. But I think all of these things are valid. But I also think that you can't always have them all working at the same time. Sometimes, you have a little bit of network more in one phase of your life. Sometimes you don't. But I think for me, the real important ones is the support network and taking time for yourself and just taking time to relax and asking for help when you need that. So I think I've said the word many times. I don't do work-life balance. I blend, and I like that. I heard that on a podcast once. I blend, and I loved it because I don't do 9 to 5. I don't clock in at 9. And I think none of us do. Academia is not a world where we typically do 9 to 5. And I like the I blend because it just means that my day's a blending of both, and I try the best that I can to accomplish both. These are my life response. My 2 kids play ice hockey, and there are clubs in the UK. And so we're in Altrincham probably 3 times a week. I manage their team. It keeps me very busy, my work responsibilities. And so really, they just all become one. And I hope that at the end of the week, I've kind of checked everything I needed to do. I hope that I've not given you the impression that I figured it out, because I haven't. I'm not here to tell you how to find your work-life balance or your blending. I get up extremely early just to have a coffee by myself and answer a few emails before the hectic day starts. I certainly, don't wash my hair enough, and there's a lot of things. I have manic days. I have days where I'm really stressed, and I have days I just want to stay home and watch Netflix because it gets too much. But I try, and I do my best, and I think I've come to accept that some days are just going to be bad and they're okay, and then you pass on to the next day. So I'd like to end. I'm not sure if this will go directly on the internet. I'd like to end the session with, it's a spoken word poem from Holly McNish that resonates a lot with me about basically identities and how we all have, this one's more about mom, but it's about how we all have different identities and people relate to us based on what they see, but we should all remember that that's it. We come with 1, 2, 3 different identities that make who we are.
I lost my name at toddler group. From Holly or Halls or Holly McNish, I'm now known as so-and-so's mum. And I can't complain, because I'm just the same. I put this same label on everyone. I met Izzy's dad for a drink at the park. We bumped into Molly's gran and Tiana's and Mark's, and it's only when the stars are out and everything's dark that my own name creeps out from under the table and I'm able to remember the person I am. With a hot cup of tea and a book in my hand and a 2-hour slot to remember my own plans before I turn off the light. Cinderella's clock strikes at midnight each time. My clock strikes loudly at 9. Until she cries out for me, or needs her next wee, or shouts in her dreams, or pleads for a 50th cuddle from me, or I sneak into her room just to look at her sleep. And the label shifts quickly to mum again. To mum again. From Holly to mum. From Holly to mum. Like a grandfather clock or a metronome run. But one word cannot sum up the things we've all done, the ways that we love, the stories we tell. No bouquet of roses are thrown on our stages, underpaid, overworked. Us feeders, us nappy-change divas, us breeders, us milk makers, milk strainers, cracked nipples, swell, painful, bottle-fed, guilt-ridden, minds riddled all day and night with their care. 1 o'clock in the morning just to check they are fine. If the covers are on right, if the nappy is too tight, if the bedroom is too light, so that even in the middle of a mother's own night, she's not quite an individual in her own right. Someone said that mums are the rocks that never crumble. I don't think that's true, because I do. I cry hidden and lose. I scream alone in my car, and when I'm woken once more and desperate to sleep, I weep watching the stars. And every parent I know says those moments are never so far. We are parents, but we are people. We are snot rags and we are dreamers. We are queens and we are cleaners. We are kissed and we are screamed at. We are sleep-deprived gardeners, cut hands hidden in gloves. We are rocks crumbling sometimes in love that's so heavy. We are storytelling experts, and our stories are many.
And I quite like that, because I think it just resonates that that's it. We're a package of identities, and I think that particularly in academia, if we kind of celebrate those identities and allow them to be, that perhaps we can, that's it, reduce that barrier of work-life balance, and just acknowledging that we all have, yeah. I don't know how to finish this. She did it better than me. But hopefully yeah. And if you need to chat later, but hopefully it's just open up discussion for the rest of the day of how we can embrace how we balance our work and our life responsibilities. Thank you.